About 20 years ago, these things called tunicates started showing up in PEI waters. These are invasive aquatic species. Now, tunicates have been causing significant problem to our local aquaculture since they showed up 20 years ago. Now, mussel fishermen feel this in particular because mussel fishermen, like you can see on the screen here, use mussel socks to catch and harvest mussels. Now, what tunicates do, as you can see up top, is they engulf these mussel socks. And since tunicates are filter feeders, just like mussels are, they can actually choke the mussels for food. So the mussels can take longer to grow. They can have longer growing times. The tunicates can actually starve them for food and kill them. And at the end of the day, they receive less yields, the fishermen, with a higher cost. So in the past, the way that we've dealt with, or researchers have dealt with invasive tunicates, has been to mitigate and contain the problem. That's the primary method they've been using. But what we want to do is try and address this problem directly with our research. And how we're going to do that is, instead of treating tunicates as a nuisance, something to be mitigated and contained, we're going to try and treat them as a resource, something to be harvested and used for our benefit. So how we do that? Well, tunicates are really interesting. They're the only animal that science knows of that contains cellulose in their bodies. It's a major structural component. Cellulose is something we think of in plants, but there's actually one animal, tunicates, that we have around here that has cellulose in their bodies. Why is that important? Because the cellulose that you can isolate from tunicates, like cellulose you can isolate from any other cellulose source, can be broken down into two things: amorphous and crystalline cellulose. The terms aren't important, but what is important is that the cellulose that is crystalline can be kind of thought of as a microscopic rebar, very small rods, small, thin, and long. And why that's important is, if you think about it like rebar, the longer the rebar, the better reinforcement that material will have inside of a composite, or a mixture of two materials. So a concrete building would be stronger if you use rebar that was twice as long. In the same way, a plastic could be made stronger by using NCC, or nanocrystalline cellulose, that is twice as long. What you can get from plants, NCC, is short. It's about 500 nanometers. What you can get from tunicates is 2 and 3 times as long. So our research is to try and take this way of extracting NCC from tunicates and scale it up industrially. If we can do this, then there's an economic reason to harvest the tunicates. And if there's an economic reason and we can make a profit doing it, then there's an incentive to directly address this tunicate problem, as opposed to mitigating and containing it. Put it another way, you can't really contain or mitigate nature, but what you can do is use it for your benefit. You can harvest what nature gives you. And that's what we're trying to do. That's my 3-minute thesis.